Great. Hey, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First, I think I want to start out by thanking Steffi and the team here who put this together for many years. This is my first visit to DLD, and I can only say one thing. It's just like super wow. Thank you very much it's been really great, and met a lot of interesting people, and it's been fun just talking about things that are important in this world. So. I don't know how I operate the slides, but if I could have the first slide just to have it up on the back. Well, we're talking about, we want to have a discussion, and I have Audrey here, on I think a very important topic, and this is really female health. We've heard a lot already today about really the central role of women. This isn't a new theme, by the way, if you take a look at the ancient Greeks in terms of who really was head of the household, who really ruled the communities, and it really was the women, and even the gods, Athena, for example, Aphrodite, and then even all the way to the point of Lysistrata in terms of the power that they had in terms of controlling the men in the communities. But what we're really faced here, I think, today, and actually in the United States, it's really a critical period. Actually, throughout the world, it's a critical period. We've heard in terms of sort of the inequities that exist where women are placed in the communities, and particularly in health. Today, I'll make a political statement that, we have something in the United States that puts us backwards 50, 100 years where a woman really doesn't have necessarily the control over her own health or her own body. And this is really serious, I think, that we need to think about. And as a male, I often get asked, why am I interested in women's health? Well, I think Michelle Obama said it. Communities and countries are ultimately, the world are really only as strong as the health of their women. This is all of our issue. It's not a female-male issue. It's really all of the things that we need to participate. So I'm going to say a couple of statistics, and then we'll go on. And I have some questions for Audrey here in terms of things that she does and things that she knows. Look, the future is female. The statistics are in 2028 that women will control 60% of the wealth. It's true. They hold more advanced degrees than men. And I think with respect to the health part, they're really the chief medical officer of the families. And in the pandemic, the last few years, I think it's really been obvious. Here you have the woman in the center of the household who has to care for not only the family and the children and her husband, who's now at home from work, but also the caretaking of parents and things like that. So there's been an extraordinary burden placed on women, I think, even during this pandemic time. And yet, if you take a look at the statistics, is that during this whole pandemic, nearly 75% of women actually delayed their own self-care, their own well-being, and their own health care and things like this. And so things like what Audrey does, and she'll explain in a minute, are really important to be able to address some of those inequities. And then sort of the last thing I'll say is that with respect to technology, look, we've had a number of really fantastic advances in technology, using of AI and quantum computing to do early detection of breast cancer. In the medical device, taking these huge instruments now and having them handheld to detect breast cancer and to do scans. And we have good applications for self-education and things. So there's been a number of advances, I think, that in technology that are trying to right this inequity. So that's kind of just a prelim to, I think, absolutely important male-female in this area. And so I'm going to start out with asking Audrey, inequities still exist in terms of women's health. I've sort of outlined where the central position of women are. What are some of the things that you see that technology can help to sort of right or reestablish the equilibrium in terms of women's health? How do we get to that empowerment, access, affordability?
Thank you, Kimon. I also want to thank Steffi and DLD for inviting us all here. Just listening to some of the speakers over the last 2 days, it's the connection of ideas And so maybe to answer your question, Kimon, it's about technology and how it can help to right the inequities. And technology is an equalizer that we heard yesterday. It's also an empowerer, and that's very much a part of well-being. Well-being, for me, I'm so inspired by what we just heard. Well-being is so many things. It's also about choice, and it's about individual's choice. And so how can technology help with that? I think there are two main aspects. One is on the knowledge side, and one is on the access side. So, for example, knowledge first.
Right.
So, even we do not know enough about our bodies. When it comes to women's health, when it comes to female health, we may not understand anything from the most basic things, like how to make a baby, to, what's going on right now? That thing I just experienced, is that normal? Is that okay? Is that healthy? Am I gonna be all right? Am I the only one? Those are all questions that are going through everyone's mind. And when you don't have that base amount of self-knowledge, you really can't be empowered to make choices for yourself or advocate for yourself, for example, if something is wrong. And it's been so much a part of history because of cultural factors, really, that let's say somebody reports like debilitating headaches every day. It's like, today it's hard because I've got headaches or I've got cramps or low sex drive. Those are all things that, are written off as, you're just PMSing. Or maybe let's not even talk about that because talking about menstruation is awkward or uncomfortable or taboo. And so a combination of like all of these factors and the fact that knowledge isn't as well put out there and shared and able to be discussed, that we aren't able to be empowered to do, to make choices for ourselves, to advocate for ourselves. And on the other side of knowledge is like, what do we actually know about female health? And technology has a huge role to play here in data in itself, right? So Clue, we've got 12 million monthly active users across literally all 190 countries, plus 190 plus countries, even somebody in Antarctica, I just realized. and what does that mean? Like, that is a data set.
Yeah.
It's 240 million periods tracked, 10 billion health data points. That is a data set that is unlike any other data set we've seen before. Because, speaking of personalized or care or care empowerment that is actually right for you, your physiology, your biology, as well as the cultural factors that surround you, having a data set that represents a diverse population of women and people with cycles from all over the world, from all kinds of different environmental or cultural structures, that empowers us to do research and forward what we know about female health in all of those different cases.
Great. Yeah, you actually mentioned something, and I think tech is also helping with this too. But there are a lot of taboo subjects. Actually, if you take a look at, I think even Google and Facebook recently really won't let you say vagina, which is obviously an anatomical part that you see in textbooks, having been in science and medicine.
Can't see the nipple either.
What's that?
You can't see the nipple on Instagram.
And so there are a lot of taboo subjects with respect to sort of the general sort of physiology. You're right, menstruation, for example, normal physiological process. Men don't really have that type of issue with respect. So when you really start talking about, the well-being and health, when you really need to focus on women's health, there are a lot of taboo subjects. Fertility, for example, and I'd like to get into that. Fertility, when someone's infertile, it's like a failure, or menstruation is actually regarded as a failure of physiology. Then you have other subjects, for example, not only in menopause and fertility, but you also have the other subjects, maternal mortality as being maternal. So, so there are a lot of taboo subjects, I think, and you also said that, women really don't understand, they don't have the education. So how do we actually, and let's take one of the examples, let's take a look at fertility. And first, the question would be, why is fertility, or even menopause, why is it such an important topic these days for women? And as a guy, I'm gonna say, well, we put a lot of pressure and a lot of demands on women, and now fertility becomes an issue because they're older, they've got careers, they have family and things like this, so now fertility. So, what do we do about this, and how does tech actually really help try to right that inequity in terms of fertility or menopause and those things?
Well, so first, fertility, let's look at both sides of fertility.
Right.
So there's the contraception
Right.
side, and then there's the conception side of fertility. And so even if we take a step back at that, tech has roles to play on both. I think we learned yesterday that 250 million women still don't have access to birth control in the world. 250 million of women in the world do not have access to birth control that works for them. And we look at that and we're like, wow, that's a big problem. We need to get contraception, accessible contraception. And for example, Clue is working on that, a digital contraceptive that literally you just need your smartphone to be able to use, and clinically effective and proven.
And you can distribute it. That actually gives you geographic distribution.
That absolutely gives you geographic distribution.
Yeah, so
and oftentimes I think we forget that on the fertility side, there's also a need there, because we're wrapped in this situation where a woman's role is in the home, or really a woman's role is reproduction. That's a lot of beliefs in a lot of cultures. And what does that mean is that women don't have a choice. When it comes to the topic of fertility, in either direction, women aren't given enough choices. Their body isn't their own to choose from. And there's that factor in fertility, which again, awareness, empowering you with knowledge, empowering you with experience or exposure to other ways of being, other choices that you can make because of your biology, because of your environment, because of your culture, that's empowering. There's also, on this level of taboo or shame, really, that's what's happening, is that, okay, I'm getting older and I'm infertile. I'm no longer a woman. I'm no longer this identity that I'm stuck being, which is baby maker. I can't do that. So then what? And what we found just talking to women and people with cycles, throughout their fertility journey, not just towards their when they get older, but even early on, is that it is incredibly stressful, and nobody talks about this. It's incredibly stressful to go, oh, well, I tried. I'm trying to conceive, and I tried, and it's not working. It's not working after 3 months. It's not working after 6 months, and getting assisted fertility care becomes very expensive. Again, that tech equalizer of making things more affordable. But one of the things that technology can do, again, back to this point of data, is when you have data on such a diverse set of experiences, you can actually look at all of this in aggregate and make it seem like, oh, it's not just this person that's dealing with this problem. It's not just this person that's experiencing shame. It's a population, it's millions of people that can be experiencing this thing, or this thing. And then you can actually customize, personalize care, solutions, emotional support delivered through technology, that enabler, to actually help them achieve whatever their goals may be, either on the contraceptive side or on the conception side.
Yeah, so you're saying that obviously part of the use of technology is making sure you have the data to be able to intervene at the right time, essentially, and to be able to educate or to have some sort of treatment or something like that. That certainly makes perfect sense. And so, a question I think has been brought up though before. In many situations, I would gather that not all really know when is the peak time in terms of to ovulate, or so it's frequency. So, for example, is that actually an issue? Do you think, in terms of do they know essentially? And so, do they go to IVF, for example, and use advanced technologies when, in fact, they're just missing the peak ovulation? Is that possible?
We're finding, and through user research, through interviewing fertility providers, we are finding that actually a lot of times the first even appointment, or what people are looking for online, actually they don't even know to look for this, is that there are a few factors that need to be true for an egg to be fertilized. And it's like descending in how well it's known, right? There is a fertile window. It's around ovulation. Most women don't actually, it's very hard to determine when, if you're not, peeing on a stick or something, it's very hard to determine when you're actually ovulating. And they don't actually know that you have to be ovulating and that a sperm has to come into contact with an egg. That's stuff that we can't see, and that's sometimes things that we don't talk about. And a lot of times, you might go, hey, I'm having a problem, and you'll see a fertility specialist, if you can afford it, that ends up spending the first appointment explaining to you timed intercourse, which is basically having sex at the right time. And I even learned a super interesting thing from our chief medical officer recently. It actually helps just have sex a lot. That's her advice. So, her friends who are like, hey, I'm having trouble, just have sex a lot. It's triggering different hormones in the body.
Yeah.
And it is also raising your probabilistic chance.
Yeah. Well, so that's obviously interesting with respect. Everybody sort of takes it for granted that actually that's already known. And that comes through education, and also comes through just general well-being too, and knowing about your body in terms of the female body and the physiology. I'm always absolutely stunned by the physiology and the resilience that is really needed to be able to make all of these physiological transitions. And so not only is it sort of the physiology, but it's also also the mindset in terms of making, so resilience really has a lot to do with all of these transitions. One of the ones that I think has gotten a lot of attention because of the way that the population is aging is menopause. And at least in the United States, as you know now, menopause is a really big issue because it's really related to what they call the Great Resignation. Women just don't want to stay, women who are in their 50s, 55, for example, don't want to stay at work any longer. Because there really hasn't been any sort of relief or hasn't been any attention to all of the types of things that are really important to them. And so they say, well, after the pandemic, I'll just stay at home and do what I need to do. So there's been a huge reduction. And so with the Great Resignation, it really is tied to menopause. Can you actually tell us a little bit about how you see, technology supporting actually women who, through this menopausal state, and how that actually can help keep people in that well-being state as part of a normal transition?
I think it goes back to that question that people are asking, like, am I normal? Like, we all want, am I normal and am I healthy? And we all want to feel safe in that space where it's like, yes, this is normal. I'm not the only one. I'm not alone. And so technology can very much help. As you enter perimenopause, one of the signs is actually irregular cycles. And so if you track your period, you can understand how regular or irregular my cycles might be, what other symptoms or what other experiences I'd be going through. And that self-awareness allows you to actually connect to other people that might be going through the same thing, so that ultimately speaking, it's like you don't have to feel alone. And it can also make you aware of various other care or treatment, let's say, if that's your choice. And again, your choice to do so. I'm curious, actually, what are your thoughts on menopause?
Well, actually, I think there's an interesting sort of new scientific discovery. I'm going to say this in the sense that the difference between the genders here, too, is that it's been commonly thought that men are just totally prolific. They have sperm their whole lives, for example, and menopause is really the failure of a woman to produce any more eggs. And I want to emphasize that, the failure or ovarian failure, okay? And so that's kind of an odd, and I see it in medical texts and all of this. Actually, it's not. The most recent sort of new technology has shown that it's not ovarian failure. And there was some really neat experiments that really give hope, not hope, I should say, that really are myth busters, and I love it. That stem cells that are actually in the ovarian bed are the ones that actually stop producing certain types of hormones that can actually give rise to new eggs. So as it turns out, it's not that a woman is born with all of these eggs, essentially, and they get depleted and then they fail. It's actually because the hormones start to go. So there's an opportunity now to stimulate these stem cells and to grow new eggs, irrespective. So menopause is not ovarian failure. So I think that's really a myth buster. It's fantastic. And we, they're just as prolific as men, and I'm excited about that because it's really great biology. Last thing I'm going to say in the last few seconds here. The most important thing I think that we can do is we can realize, again, women really carry on a lot of responsibilities in the family, that we empower them with technology to lead healthy lives. When they're healthy, the whole community is healthy. I'm an extremely big believer in that. We need to use technology to be able to detect early and women-specific conditions, and we also need to be able to use technology to be able to empower women to lead very, very healthy lives, whether it's fertility, menopause, all of those transitions that they go through. So this is an exciting time. And last thing, please work hard and think about having to not repeal, but to put in the context that women do need to have control over their own health. And those things you see in the United States cannot be carried to the rest of the world at this time.
And to add one thing to that, as an American transplanted to the EU, thank you, European Union, for the GDPR.
Right.
And data privacy technology is very much enabled to do things for women and people with cycles because of this data privacy and data protection. Teach the rest of the world how to do it.
Thank you.